Hello, and welcome to another episode of Movies, They're pretty good. I'm your host, Travis Dudding, and it is a new year, so I figured I would try out a new filming location, get out of my bedroom that's a little cramped for recording in there. Not that this is too much better, but we'll see how this goes. This may be the only episode I record here, or this may be the new permanent spot. We'll see. But like I said, Happy New Year to everyone that's coming back, or new listeners, whoever you are. 2026. Let's see. But yeah, let's get right into today's movie, which is 2016, which means this year it's going to be 10 year. Not till the end of the year, but it's going to be a 10-year-old movie now. And that is La La Land. I got the I believe this was the Best Buy Steelbook, back when they used to still do physical media releases. But yeah, this was a day one purchase for me. Love this movie so much. Saw it in the theater. I knew it had a lot of traction to be a Best Picture nominee. And of course, it did get nominated for Best Picture along with a bunch of other Oscars. And then there was the whole fiasco at the Oscars where they wrongfully announced La La Land as the winner of Best Picture, and when in fact it was Moonlight. So I remember watching that. I was on when I was in the military, and I was on a work trip, basically. It was like a TDY is what it's called. And I was just watching it on my hotel room TV, and it was crazy. I couldn't believe that that's what happened. But yeah, it's crazy year. But I would have been happy either way, honestly. Like, I loved La La Land, would have been happy to see that win Best Picture. Loved Moonlight, glad it won Best Picture, So, all right, let's get into it. So the first frame of the movie is like a cropped 4:3 aspect ratio CinemaScope logo. Like, you can't even see the whole logo until it stretches to the full widescreen format, and then you can see the full CinemaScope logo. I believe it starts in black and white and then switches to color, turns into blue sky, then it pans down and we see traffic, LA traffic, the city slow. And I believe this is the 105-110 interchange. I could say, like, yeah, that one has really bad traffic. Every fucking freeway has bad traffic. Every surface street has bad traffic in LA. LA is insane when it comes to traffic. But it's fucking LA, To me, I'd rather sit in traffic and be in a beautiful state, city, whatever it is, than live somewhere where there's no traffic and there ain't fucking shit to do, So, this is very much an LA movie, and it's a love letter to Hollywood, as they say. That's as every pretentious film critic, screenwriter, everyone fucking says. But it really is, it's there's famous locations on display here, everything. It's so gorgeous. And it'll shy away from the dirtier parts of LA, and you get to see the traffic. That is like a major negative part, but obviously there's more to it. It's not just all glitz and glamour. There is a very large homeless problem, and I believe I have talked about that a little bit on this podcast before. But when everyone just says, like, oh, we should do something about the homeless problem, and then they want to build a homeless shelter in their neighborhood, then all of a sudden they have a problem with it. So, and it's just a never-ending struggle with that. And, hopefully something happens, I currently can't vote on anything in any of those areas. Not LA, California, nothing. So, but if I ever do move back, hopefully, do what you can, obviously. And but it's also just not the main focus of the movie. Yes, it is a love letter to Hollywood or whatever, but it's more than that. That's just kind of like the backdrop to everything, and it's where it's taking place. It is about show business to an extent, but it's not only that. At the very heart of it, the number one thing that it is a love story. And spoiler alert, they don't end up together, obviously. I'm hoping you've seen this movie before. I don't know why you would watch this without watching the movie first and then be upset about a spoiler, but that's how this works. But that doesn't mean it's not a beautiful love story, because it is. And I'll get into that as we get going through the plot and everything, but it's an amazing love story. And I'll kind of talk about at the end like what I think it means and everything, but yeah, let's just get in the movie. But yeah, like I said, traffic, LA, and blue skies, and then the music starts kicking in and we get our first musical number right out the gate, and it's Another Day of Sun. People get out of their cars, they're dancing on the roof of the car, it's insane. Obviously something that never happens, but you would have time to do it. It's sitting in traffic because that's just how slow it is. But that's the conceit of musicals, is that these otherworldly, unrealistic things happen, and that's just, you surrender yourself to that because it's not about this. You're not going to a musical for realism. If you are, you're an insane person. What are you doing? But and I get that a lot of people don't like musicals. It's understandable. There's a lot of people that just can't fathom anything that like can't happen in reality. That they'll be like that with any type of movie. Like, oh, I'm not gonna watch Star Wars because that's fake. Whatever. And I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong on that. I might think you're weird, but but to each his own. But I will say that there is a type of musical that I don't like. Because I am a fan of musicals, musical movies. The type I don't like are the ones where there is no just normal dialogue at any point. There's no normal scenes where it's like a regular movie and then all of a sudden there's a music number. I'm talking the ones that they're singing the whole fucking time. There's no break. There's no reality in it, and I don't know. It's just, maybe I just haven't seen the right one, but Les Mis and Sweeney Todd. I think Into the Woods was the same. Watched all those. Not just it's just, that's just not the type for me. I don't know. I think it's just like the talk singing can kind of get like grating, I guess, because when it's like that and it's like in between like musical numbers, because it's a musical number is going to be a very well written song. And obviously there are big numbers in those, like I Dreamed a Dream and Les Mis, but all that in between stuff is just kind of like okay singing. And I would rather it just be good acting than okay singing, but like I said, to each his own. That's just my opinion on that type of musical. But, and I know I'm not alone in that, but there are people that like that type. So, that's, like I said, to each his own. But yeah, it's a fun musical number. It's, it's flashy, it's catchy song, everything like that. And then it ends, and then just everyone gets back in their cars and sits back in traffic. We pan down and we see the first of our main characters. We see Sebastian, played by Ryan Gosling. He's in his, like, I don't know what kind of car it is, but it is an old convertible, and he's messing around with the tape player. He's listening to different jazz cassettes, and I don't know if they're recordings of himself that he's trying to like get it right or something, but he keeps like stopping, rewinding, listening, stopping, so he's trying to do something. He's trying to figure something out, and he's getting frustrated. And then we see the car in front of him is a Prius with Emma Stone in it. Her character is Mia, and she's it looks like she's on the phone, and she's having like some semi-intense conversation, and then she kind of pauses and then looks down at her script, and you realize that she's just practicing for an audition. So then she's getting honked at because she's not moving, and then Ryan Gosling pulls around, like pulls up to her, like honks at her, like kind of glares at her, and then moves on. And she realizes like, oh yeah, I should be going, you know. We see her get to her job, and she's a barista at a cafe on the back lot, you know. I think it's Warner Brothers where they're filming. It doesn't, nothing looks familiar because I've been to Universal Studios a lot, but so nothing jumped out as like being familiar from Universal. So I'm assuming it's Warner Brothers based on the geography of the hills and everything like that, because those two are in like kind of the same valley. They are near each other, but you know, like I said, nothing stood out as being familiar. So that's why I think it's Warner Brothers. And obviously I could have looked this up, but of course I didn't. But she's working in there, and then she gets like an alarm on her phone and realizes that that's like a notification saying that audition now. And she's like, oh shit, like I gotta go. And so she tells her boss that she has to cut out, and you know, the boss isn't too happy about it, which, you know, I don't know. It's weird. You know, if you're going to be upset every time the wannabe actor has to go to an audition, then don't hire a fucking actor, you know. But not everyone, like, granted, most people in LA want to be famous, but not everybody. But yeah, that always irritates me, and I feel like it's a trope. But you know, it's based in something, and I am not at all surprised that people are actually like that, because granted, while that aspect of it isn't familiar to me, I've dealt with people like that, you know, and it's just like they don't want you to call in sick, but they're going to be mad at you if you get everyone else sick. You know what I mean? And there's no way to fucking win at anything, you know? So, yeah, that just always irritates me. But yeah, she grabs her script and she's heading out the door, and then she runs into a guy that has a coffee and gets coffee all over her white shirt. And she was supposed to wear this white shirt to the audition. I think that's like they got asked to wear white shirts because later when she leaves, you'll see all the other actresses are wearing like a similar type of shirt. But she's in the audition with like her like blue puffy jacket zipped up. It is winter, by the way. Granted, I don't think there's ever a point in LA where you need that thick of a jacket, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, she's in there. She's still going through the audition. She's got the jacket on. She's getting through it, and then you can see someone kind of in the background, like in the window on the door, like motioning to the person who's like running the audition. And then they're like, excuse me, can you wait a second? And then like let the person in, and then basically just like right in the middle of her momentum where she's getting emotional and everything like that, they just like completely throw a wrench in it, throw her off completely. And then it's just like that awkward moment, like, okay, like, am I supposed to keep going? Like, do you want me to still go? Like, is this done? You know, what, you know, I can't read your mind, so tell me something, you know? And so she leaves. She's frustrated. Obviously she's not going to get that part because it just did not go well. And, like I said, you see in the hallway all the different other people. That's all, but basically a bunch of redheads in white shirts, you know, that kind of look like her. And so she heads back to her place. I think it's either like an apartment or a house that she's sharing with some friends. And I really like the aesthetics of the house. It's very colorful. It's very like primary colors and everything like that. And that kind of aids the next musical number, because they're trying to get her out of the house. You know, even though she had a bad day, they're trying to cheer her up and everything. Like, come on, like, come out with us. Like, you'll feel better. And so that, because they're going to some party or something. And then each one is like wearing like a different color dress, and like different walls of the house are like these different bright colors and everything like that. And it really is like showing what I was just talking about. I forget which episode it was on, how I was talking about like the lack of color in movies now, you know. And obviously 9 years ago it wasn't such a problem, because this is a very vibrant movie, and it's just beautiful. Looks amazing. But yeah, they go into this music number because they finally, she's like, you know, I'm not gonna go. And then as they're heading out, then she catches up with them. And then they're doing like dancing in the street and stuff. They get in the car and they get to the party, and, it's all vibrant and colorful there. And then she goes into the bathroom to like have like a moment to herself. And then it kind of like slows down a little bit. And I like how she comes out of the bathroom, and it's very dreamy because like everyone's like dancing, but they're kind of in slow motion, even though she's like kind of moving normal speed. And, I don't know. It's hard to describe it because I don't know. It's just hard to describe. But it's super cool looking. But yeah, the song is called Someone in the Crowd. It's kind of like, hey, come to this party, you might get noticed by someone, that each of them is hoping to be the someone in the crowd that gets noticed and becomes a big star. That's, I think, the dream of everybody in LA. So once she does leave the party, she gets out to where her car is supposed to be and realizes that she got towed. And so obviously extremely frustrating, but so she's just walking home. I don't know why she didn't get like an Uber or something, but maybe she just broke, who knows. So she goes for a walk. Maybe she's not living, maybe she doesn't live that far away from where she lives. So she's walking home, and then as she's walking home, she kind of hears music from the sidewalk in this like restaurant lounge something. And a fan of the movie would recognize that this is the Mia and Sebastian theme of, the overarching love theme music of the movie. So she hears it, she's interested, she goes inside, and we see Ryan Gosling playing at the piano. He's the one playing it. And then I really like how they do this, where all of the lights inside the restaurant, like, because it's like natural ambient light inside there, and all of those, like the Christmas lights, the lamps, everything just dims, and then a spotlight is on her. And this is another one of those things that is like kind of like aiding to the dreaminess of that musicals live in, and I just think it just looks great. That's always the best philosophy, in my opinion, is just make it look interesting, because if there's nothing catching your eye, if there's nothing interesting about the shot, then no one gives a shit about it. But then as she's watching him play, then it kind of, the sound of like car horns starts fading in, and then we cut back to the beginning of the movie where the first number has ended and they're in traffic and he's honking at her. But now we're going to see from then to then, from his point of view. So he gets home, realizes that someone is in his apartment. It's his sister, and she's giving him a hard time because he's like basically like not fully unpacked. I don't know if he just moved in there. Kind of sounds like he didn't, but just like giving him a hard time about he needs to find somebody and he needs to get a decent job and, all these different things. And, just sibling stuff, you're kind of rude about it, but, you just have that person's best interest at heart, He's also complaining about like a famous jazz place, which of course now I'm not going to remember the name. But he's just complaining that, like, hey, this used to be, like, this great, like, iconic jazz venue, and now it's turned into this, like, samba tapas bar, And then she's just like, none of that matters. Like, just get your life together. I'm going to set you up with this girl. Here's her number, and, stuff like that. So he's, like, big into jazz. He even asks, like, does she like jazz? She's like, I don't know. Like, does it matter? And he's like, yes, it does matter, because that's like his one thing, his special interest, So then once she's gone, he's in there composing a song, basically, and it is. So I think he's just trying to like be like a solo guy and like work on his own music, but he's doing these small gigs, because then after that we see him at the restaurant where we cut away from earlier, and he's talking to his boss, played by J.K. Simmons, who was the, Basically it is like the star role, even though he's not the main character. But he won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar, I believe, but for Whiplash, and that's also by Damien Chazelle, same director. But that was just the earlier movie. I think 2014 for that one. Also another great one. I'll cover that at some point. But yeah, his boss is J.K. Simmons. Like I said, it was winter, so it's Christmas time. There's like Christmas decorations and lights and everything, and he's like, "Hey, like, I want you to stick to the set list. Play these Christmas songs. I don't want to hear any of that free jazz crap or anything like that. Just stick to the set list." And he's just like, "Well, what about like one for me, one for them, one for me?" He's like, "No," and he's just like trying to compromise, but ends up just being like, "All right, fine, like." Only the set list. No. So he's frustrated. He wants to get his own music out there, and he's like arguing like none of these people care, and J.K. Simmons like, well, I care, so I don't want to hear it. I want to hear the Christmas songs. And so he, goes out there and he's playing them. He's playing like Jingle Bells and stuff like that. All the classics. And then eventually he's like looking around and kind of realizes like, okay, no one's really paying attention. So then he starts to play the Mia and Sebastian's theme. Obviously, this is what kind of lures Mia to come into the restaurant. And so we catch up and we see her coming in. And then he kind of like keeps playing until he gets to like this big crescendo where he like stands up and everyone kind of is like looking at him like why'd you just stand up? And then J.K. Simmons comes over and he's like, telling him like, come on, like I told you to play the set list. Why didn't you play the set list? And fires him. And so he's obviously upset. He's fired. He starts to walk out. Mia tries to stop him and she's like, "Hey, I heard you playing." And he just like shoulder checks her and just keeps walking. And she just like has this look like what the hell, And, then that's the end of that scene. Oh, I forgot to mention that before he gets fired and J.K. Simmons comes and talks to him, they do like make eye contact. Like Mia and Sebastian do make eye contact with each other, and they do have like a little bit of a moment at first. So, it's not too important, but it is at the same time, So then we get a short montage of her auditioning for other parts, and it's like one where she's dressed as a cop and one where she's like a teacher, and it's kind of like a Dangerous Minds type deal, and like she's she's teaching in the inner city and like stuff like that, and she's getting lines fed to her from like a producer or something, and there's just like no inflection given from the producer or anything like that. It's just like a lot of like character actor parts, like small things, nothing major, and just kind of showing her that she's going for everything basically. So then we get another like establishing card saying that it is now spring, and she is at a pool party, like backyard pool party / just party in general. And we can hear like some 80s music playing, and I think it's Take on Me is what's playing at the moment. And so there's just like all these people she's walking through, and like one of her friends is like, "Hey, I want you to meet this guy. Like he's a writer." And he starts talking, he's just, you could tell he's just like a very, up his own ass like type of guy. And she like kind of cuts him off as he's talking, and she's like, "I'm gonna go get a drink," And so she goes over to the bar to get a drink, stands there for a sec, doesn't actually get anything, and then kind of turns around to like go watch the band. And when she gets over there, she notices that it's Sebastian in the band, but he's like in like an 80s outfit, and he's playing the guitar and like the other keyboard and everything like that. And then they make eye contact with each other, like they recognize each other from like that night, that moment that they had. And so then she's like kind of like making faces at him, like, it's silly that he's in this like band and everything. And then they stop the song, and then they're like, "Oh, any requests?" Maybe this is when he notices her is when they stop, and then the singer asks for requests, and then she requests "I Ran" by Flock of Seagulls. And so they start playing that, and that's when he kind of like has like a knowing look, like, oh my gosh, like that's her, and why are you making me play this song? And so he's playing, and as they're playing, she's like kind of making faces at him and like dancing all silly and goofy and stuff like that. And then like after the song, like when the band is on break, they're talking with each other and they're just giving each other a hard time and everything, but like in a playful way, you know. So it's the chemistry is building at this point. So, but they're still not like, you know, there's no like clear like they definitely like each other yet, but it's getting there. So it cuts to like at the end of the party, the sun's down, it's a little dark, and a bunch of people are out front. There was a valet for this party, so there's people waiting for their cars and things like that. She's there talking to that writer guy from before, and I forget the like specifics that he talks about, but he's basically like getting like super pseudo intellectual about Goldilocks and the Three Bears or some shit like that. And but I forget who he like. I think he like compares Goldilocks to like Joseph Campbell and stuff like. I don't know. It's some like wild, you know, like writer bullshit. You know, like the typical like trope, like, you know, that because that's what he is, like an up his own ass Hollywood writer. So as they're like as they're having that one-sided conversation, Ryan Gosling comes out, and he's just, you know, heading out to the street to get his car, and then she kind of flags him down, and she's like, oh, like, hey, like I know him, you know, and trying to just get out of this conversation by any means necessary. And she's like, oh, like, you know, can you grab my keys from the valet? And he's like, okay, like, what, like, which keys are yours? And she's like, it's a Prius. And then, then I love this shot because then you look at the like key box, and it's like all Priuses, or it's all like Toyota key fobs and everything. And he's like that doesn't help. And she's like, with the green ribbon. And he's like, okay, you know, so he grabs it, and then he's like, and then she's like, says to the writers, like, oh, like, you know, I'm gonna head off like with my friend, you know, go talk to him, like it was nice meeting you, you know, whatever. And so they're walking to her car, they're coming up the hill like this. So this is somewhere in like the Hollywood Hills, like Griffith Observatory area, because they're heading up the hill and just walking and talking with each other. You know, that chemistry's kind of building a little bit. They get up to like a little park bench and stuff with like a gorgeous view of the city, and then kicks in the next song, which is A Lovely Night. And then so this kind of singing this duet with each other, and she's like changing out of her heels into some normal shoes, they're tap shoes that are the same that he's wearing. And then so they kind of do like a little bit of a tap dance, you know, it's not like Gregory Hines level, but it's, you know, it's pretty good, you know. Not, I don't think any of them are like professional tap dancers, but it's good, you know. And it's a fun scene. It's a beautiful scene. I love it. It's so iconic. It's like with like the purple sky in the background. I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's like one of the main posters for the movie too. But yeah, great, lovely moment. And then it gets cut by her cell phone ringing, and she picks it up, and it's her boyfriend Greg. And she's like, oh, hi Greg, yep, no, like, yeah, like I'll be there soon. And then this kind of like takes the wind out of Sebastian's sails and everything like that. But, you know, he's still like you know, he's still being a gentleman or anything. He's not just like you know, he's not being a nice guy, you know, about it. And I mean, he is being a nice guy, but he's not being a nice guy. And I think you guys know what I mean. So then after that, she clicks her key fob, and then her car is like right there, like right where they've been doing the dance. So he walks her over to the car, like opens the door for her, and then they like say goodbye to each other. And then she drives off, and then and she offers like, hey, can I drive you to your car, or you want me to drive you to your car? And he's like, oh no, I'm just like right there. And so she drives off. And then he starts walking down the hill and gets all the way down to where they started. And his car was like right across the street from the house where the party was. So he was being like a super gentleman, you know, just like walked her all the way to the car and didn't want to inconvenience her or anything like that, you know. So I like that. I think it's a sweet moment. So I don't know if it's the next day, but the next scene, she's back at work at the coffee shop. Some customer comes up complaining about the like large croissant and asks if it's like gluten free, and of course it's not, you know. So, and she's like, well, I want a refund. And so she's like, let me go check on that. And she goes to talk to her manager. The manager's like, doesn't even like acknowledge that like there's a problem, and just is like, oh, hey, can you work this day? And she's like, no, I have an audition that day. And she's like, does it look like I care? And like, you asked, you know, and you know that I already talked about that. Is just frustrating. But as that's happening, in comes Sebastian, because they had talked like at the party, and or maybe when they're walking up the hill, that she works at that cafe on the back lot. And so he came in to like talk to her and everything, and she is happy to see him. So, and then like goes and talks to him, and then the customer's like still there waiting for an answer, and then they do just like end up leaving. With, you know, we don't get to see like the resolution with the customer or anything like that, but she's just like, hey, like I'm off in 10 minutes, like, and then we can hang out. And so we see them leaving together. And then they start like kind of just walking through the back lot and talking with each other. And, you know, there's something actively filming, and then they, you know, have to like whisper for that part. And then they just start just walking through the studio and just getting to know each other. And he's like talking about jazz a bunch, and she's like, you know, like before we go any further, like I need to tell you I hate jazz. And he's like, what do you mean you hate jazz? And she's like, I just don't like it. When I listen to it, I don't like it. And then he's just like, well, you know, you just haven't like really like heard jazz or something like that. And he's like, what are you doing right now? And then she's like, nothing. And he's like, all right, you know, come with me. So he takes her to this like jazz club that's at the Lighthouse Cafe, which is an actual place. I don't know if they actually do music there, but I haven't been, but it is on my, like, it's saved on my Google Maps as a place for me to go sometime. So they're there, and he's just kind of talking to her, you know. I mean, you know, it's a little eye rolly because it is just a white guy explaining jazz, you know, or mansplaining jazz. He's both mansplaining and white-splaining something. But, you know, he's making good points about it. He's like talking about like, you know, like a lot of people say they don't like jazz and they just don't know the context of it. They don't know where it came from, and, you know, all this stuff, you know, which are all like valid points about it. I have taken a history of jazz college course, you know, this might as well take a fun one if you have to do an elective. And, you know, just kind of like, and she's just talking about like, well, what about like Kenny G, you know, like elevator music, you know, smooth jazz, you just put it on and it's in the background, you know. And he's just like no, like that's not it, you know. It's not about that. It's not like real jazz, you know, that type of thing. Which honestly, that is like kind of like what, you know, my idea of jazz was before like I actually heard anything good, you know, like Miles Davis and all those guys. But then her phone rings, and then she gets a call back for one of the shows she auditioned for. It was the one that's like kind of like a dangerous, she says, she described it as Dangerous Minds meets the OC. And then she's like backpedaling, like, I feel like I said a lot of negative things about it, but it's actually like pretty cool. And like, and then I think she compares it to Rebel Without a Cause. And then Sebastian says like a line from it, and she's just like, yeah, you know. And then like kind of like a awkward, and then he's like, you've never seen it? And she's like, no, I haven't, you know, I haven't seen it. And he's like, oh, like you got to see it, like especially if you get this part, you know, like, so but hey, it's playing at the Rialto on Friday or something like that, like we should go. And she's like, oh yeah, like totally, like yeah, let's do it. So yeah, they had this great day together. They part ways. They have plans to meet up again at the Rialto to see Rebel Without a Cause. So yeah, they part ways. and he's walking like on the pier. It's not the Santa Monica pier. I forget which pier this is, but and then he's singing, starts singing "City of Stars," which is the one that won Best Original Song at the Oscars that year. Also, Emma Stone won Best Actress, by the way. Yeah, it's a great song. It's so like jaunty and just, but also like mellow at the same time. It's perfect. I really like it. You know, the star of the soundtrack is the Mia and Sebastian theme, but this is the next one. So then we see her at the audition that she got the callback for, and one person is like on their phone texting, and the other person's like looking at her headshot, and then at the back of it, and then looks at her, gives her like this like weird look, like I don't know, it's like, well, let's see what you got. And I was like, you know, just weird attitude about it. And so she knows that like it's probably not going to go well, and so she starts auditioning, gets like a sentence and a half in, they like barely let her go. She's like, you know, that's thank you, you know, we're good, you know, thank you for coming in. And then she's like, do you want me to try it a different way? And she's like, no, you know. And she's just like, all right, well, thanks, you know, and then leaves. And she's frustrated. We see her driving. You can like visibly tell on her face that she's just like upset about this and everything. But as she's driving, she looks out the window and there's the Rialto Theater. And then she gets a smile on her face because then she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to meet up with him. And, you know, so now like just the thought of like that, oh, like I'm going to go meet up with him is already like turned her entire day around, you know. And so she gets home and she's like getting ready, and then in comes Greg, and he's like, hey, like you're about ready for dinner? And he's like, oh, like did you forget? And so like they're gonna meet up with his brother, and he just flew in, and they're going out to dinner or something like that. And then she's like, yeah, okay, you know, let me get ready. And so he seems like a nice guy, you know, is the thing, but he's just a little, you know, a little uptight, a little snooty, you know, a little bro-y, but also like businessy, you know, like a business bro basically. And so we see her at the dinner, and she's like, you know, you could tell she's just not having a good time, and she's just kind of thinking about like, you know, like, oh man, this guy kind of sucks, you know, like I'm just not interested in anything he's talking about. He's not even talking to me, you know, they're just like talking about themselves, you know, that type of thing. And then she hears some like jazz like over the speakers coming in. I think it is me and Sebastian's theme, but it's like, you know, I think it's more like that's not what's actually playing, but her hearing that is like, oh, that's right, him, you know, and he doesn't suck. Like I actually like listening to him talk. And then just kind of like has this like epiphany, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna go, you know, and then just leaves and runs out of there, and she's just running down the street. And then I don't remember if she gets a cab or not, but she is running, and then she gets the Rialto. She gets in there. We've seen him like as she's like leaving, like he's in there and he's just kind of looking around for her, you know, seeing like is she gonna come? Did I get stood up? Like what's going on? So she gets in there, she like runs up to the front, and then is like looking, you know, the projection is on her face, you know, so she is like blocking the projector, and no one's like saying anything. Like this is like, it's such a like cool look for the movie, you know, it looks cool. It, you know, it's a great shot. It's interesting and everything like that. And it's like got the like, it resonates like emotionally and everything like that. It gives you that like reaction because they notice each other, and that way he sees her because, you know, she's illuminated by the projector and everything. Yeah. For the movie, it's perfect, you know, but if this happened in real life, I'd be so fucking mad. You know, I don't care what your love story is, like down in front, you know, like stop blocking the screen. I don't give a fuck. Like, you know, just figure it out and stop ruining my experience. But for in this movie, like I'm just like my heart is full, and I'm just like so happy that they're there and they're together and everything like that. So they're watching it. It gets to the scene that's shot or takes place at the Griffith Observatory. And they're watching it, and then they're kind of like, their hands are kind of inching towards each other, and then they kind of like touch pinkies and like kind of hold hands. And then like right when they're about to kiss, the projector burns out, like the film burns up. And so they kind of like ruins the moment, but they both like laugh about it, and then just like, oh, like, what are you gonna do? And that has only happened to me one time, like back when like everything was still projected on film. That was just like the norm back then. The movie that it happened during was the like Eddie Murphy sci-fi comedy, The Adventures of Pluto Nash. And the movie was so bad that like not one person was like, there was no like, oh, when it burnt out, like no one was upset. Everyone was just like, all right, let's go. We're done with that. Like, let's move on with our lives. But yeah, that's the only time that's ever happened to me, like out, like in real life. And I just always think about that. So then I forget which one of them says it, and they're like, all right, like I have an idea. So then we see their car pulling up to the Griffith Observatory. They drive right onto the fucking sidewalk. There is not a soul there. Also unrealistic, It's like, if they were to like, there would have been hella people out in that like parking lot of like the little like cul-de-sac right there. And like, they would have like ran over 50 influencers taking pictures on that fucking sidewalk just to like zoom up to the entrance. But yeah, they drive right on the sidewalk, right up to the entrance. They go in, it's completely empty. Now, granted, is it realistic? No. Is it beautiful for this movie? Yes. That's just like the irony of musicals. It's like they can do whatever they want, honestly, and could be so unrealistic, and it's just like gorgeous as long as it looks good and sounds good. That's all that matters. But yeah, they're exploring through there, going through like different rooms and stuff. They get to the I guess it's like where it's like a little theater where they project like constellations and stuff on the ceiling and everything. I know there's a word for that type of room, but I forget what it is. I didn't see that room when I went there. But they're in there, the music's going and everything. And it's just like kind of like dancey, but like not like really, and they're like no dialogue or anything like that. And then they're standing looking at each other, and then I think it's his handkerchief like flies out of his pocket, like up into the air, and then they like look at each other and like make eye contact. But it's like we're seeing it like straight into the camera, like they're, boom, boom. And then he just like kind of grabs her by the waist and like kind of pushes her up, and she just like floats into the air, and then he's floating with her. And oh man, it's so cool. I'm just like, yep, show me this. Like, I don't care that it's not real, it's just the like most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Man, it's because the music's perfect. The music swells right when she like kind of floats off. Oh man, it's so good. And then they're just kind of like floating through space and dancing and stuff like that. It's beautiful. I love it so much. And then they land, and it's kind of like them back in reality, and then they finally kiss, and then it like, I think it pinholes in, and then pinholes back out, and then we see her. She's writing something. You can tell it's a script of some sort, because she did talk about when she was a kid that she liked to write plays and things like that. And so then one of her roommates is like, hey, like, what are you writing? And then she's like, oh, it's a play. And then one of the other roommates is like, well, there better be parts for us. And she's like, well, it's a one-woman show, so there's not. And as they're talking, we hear a honk, like a car horn, and then, but it's just like someone like laying on the horn, and then someone's like, and then she's smiling, and then one of her roommates is like, is that gonna happen every time? And she's like, yep. And then she goes out there. It's Sebastian. He's in the car, and she gets in, and they go drive off on some adventure. Then we see, the summer info card, I will keep wanting to say title card, but it's not a title card, But yeah, it's summer now. We see like a little mini montage of them going around to like all over LA, all these like different landmarks and stuff like that. We see them on like the Angel Flight gondola and things like that. And it ends with them at like a jazz club. They're back at the lighthouse basically, but this time he's playing on the piano and then she's in the crowd like dancing and stuff. And it's a fun little musical moment and everything. When he's done and they're at the table together, John Legend comes. Well, it's not John Legend playing the character of Keith comes up, and it's like they know each other, and there's but there is like a little bit of tension and stuff, and he's like, man, like you got it, like I have this band, like we're in need of a keyboardist basically, and so like if you're interested, let me know, like come by. And he's like, oh yeah, whatever, maybe, I'll let you know. And then when he walks away, he's just like, like complaining about him, and he's just like, he's just not like he doesn't appreciate jazz the way I do, stuff like that. So then we cut back to I think it's his apartment. I'm not really sure. But anyways, like she has just finished showing him, like basically rehearsing her script for him. And he's like so happy, kisses her and everything like that. Like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like you're a genius and everything. Like super supportive, super cute and everything. Then she shows him a logo that she made. Like, he's like, hey, like I know you want to like open your own nightclub someday, and I made you a logo, and it just says like Sebs, and there's like a music note for the apostrophe. And he's like, oh man, like I love it, but like I wanted to call it this, I forget what it was called, like chicken on a stick. And then I forget the reasoning. Like Charlie Parker's nickname was Bird, like it's like 10 layers of jazz nerd. But he's like super happy with it and everything like that. And she's like, I think you should call it this. They just kind of have a conversation about it. And then it's like, I don't know if it's the next day, but she's on the phone with her mom, and we're only hearing her side of the conversation. And she's like, oh yeah, like talking about like the play that she wrote. And then like, oh yeah, he's good, and he's only hearing like her side of it. And it's obvious that the mom is asking questions like that are kind of like, well, what does he do for work? And it's like, because she's like talking about how he wants to open the place and he just has to like save up money before he can. And it's he's getting there, it'll come, he's doing these jobs, but he just doesn't have anything steady, and he's like feeling self-conscious about it, you can tell. And so we see him like going to meet with Keith, John Legend, and he's just like, all right, he realizes he needs to do something that's like stable, and so he can be like supportive and everything like that. So yeah, he gets in there and he's like, all right, I'm glad you changed your mind. Like it's going to be $1,000 a week plus, ticket revenue plus this, and as he's saying this, like, right, Sebastian's like eyes are like shit, that's like way more money than I've made in a long time. So, he's just like, yeah, yeah, that's good. And then, so they get in there, they start playing, and then it's like, it's jazzy, but then it's like electronic too and stuff like that. And you could tell he's just like, kind of like, this is what I was afraid of, but whatever, I got to do it. And he's just like, he has like a look on his face, like, you call this jazz, that type of thing. But, so then it cuts to them talking like after the jam session and everything. And he's just like, hey, like, I know what you're going to say, but you look up to all these different people, and those guys were revolutionaries. And it's like, you can't be a revolutionary if you're stuck being a traditionalist, and he does have a point there, but I think the point that the movie's trying to make is that you have to have both. You got to have people that are pushing a genre, and then you have to have people that are, keeping the old stuff alive so it's not forgotten. I think that's like the fair balance right there, and no one's wrong for doing either one. Back at his apartment, he's playing the City of Stars on there as Mia's coming home, and then she's just like kind of like watching him and like adoring him. It's like a really cool like green hue in the background and everything, just like cinematography is amazing, and it's just like great use of color and lighting and everything like that. And then it kind of turns into a little bit of a duet and everything, and they're singing together, and it's beautiful. Then we get kind of a montage of like her prepping for the one woman show, and he's prepping to go on tour, and all these different things that them just like kind of going and going and going. We see that she moves in with him to his place. They're just busy all the time, and it's like kind of like their schedules aren't lining up because he's out late, playing gigs and stuff. So he'll come in like while she's already asleep, things like that. And he has to like stay in bed because he was up later, all kinds of stuff. Like there's not like, it doesn't seem like there's much like tension yet, like because of it, but you can see that the seeds are there for it to get tense. So then we see her going to the first gig that she's seen of this like band. I think it's the Messengers is what they're called. But the song starts, and it starts like normal. Well, it starts with like him playing the piano and then John Legend singing, which like right there, it's like perfect. And the song is Start a Fire. And it's like a huge thing. It's like, pyrotechnics, and there's dancers and backup singers and everything. And then, you can kind of see like the look on her face, like she's kind of just surprised because she knows like what his deal is with jazz and everything like that, and just music in general. And I think it's like kind of like, it's like a surprise, kind of a pleasant surprise, like, oh wow, like this is a big deal, but also just kind of like, I know, but is he happy with this? And then she's noticing like all these people are like, all excited, like when he's doing his like solo and stuff, and like all the girls are screaming. And then I don't know if like that's like kind of like a little bit of jealousy, but not, I don't know. She doesn't seem like that type of person though, so I'm not sure that that's what it is. But then like she's getting kind of like pushed to the back by the crowd. And this is a crowd of like men and women, so it's not like, that's why I don't think that that's the point that they were trying to make by like having like the girls screaming and stuff. I think it was just more like, oh wow, like these people are pushing me further back in a priority. Not that it doesn't seem like he's making them a priority over her, but I think just like in her mind or in reality, that's what's like happening, and it's like all these people are in the way of us. So then we see that it's fall. We see her like coming out of like maybe she was like setting up the venue or something for the one woman show or rehearsal space, something. Because she's walking home and she's calling him, and she's like, hey, like I don't remember if you're in Boston or Texas or something, but I miss you. We haven't talked in a while. Hope everything's going okay. Call me back when you get a chance, that type of thing. And then she gets home and realizes that she hears jazz playing and there's like commotion in the kitchen. She's like, oh, like someone's home, and it's him, and he's prepping this like romantic dinner and everything like that. And she's like, oh, like you're home early, surprise, that type of thing. And she's super happy to see him and everything. It's a nice romantic gesture and everything, and it's a great moment that is gonna kind of sour in a little bit, because they get to talking, and he's like, hey, I only have a little bit of time, and then I have to fly out in the morning. And that's not the thing that makes it like, that's not the part that makes it go bad, because he's like, yeah, I gotta go to Boise, and like, hey, like I think you should come. And she's like, well, I can't because I gotta rehearse for the for the play. And he's like, well, can't you rehearse anywhere? And she's like, you mean anywhere you are? And it is kind of like a, like I can't just pick up my thing and go wherever you are, that type of thing, which is valid, especially if it's like that close. I think they're only like a week or two out from the actual show. And it's like, at that point, you got to be rehearsing in the space, But yeah, so this like kind of leads to an argument of like, okay, I didn't really mean it like that. And then it's like, well, like when are you going to be done with the tour? And he's like, well, after the tour, we record the album, and then we go out on tour again. And she's like again, like what, like why so much? And he's like, well, like this is what it is. It's like you tour to get money to make the album, and then you make the album, and then you tour the album. That's just how it goes. And I think she is realizing that this is like way more consuming of him and his time than she was expecting, and she was kind of thinking that this was just going to be like a temporary thing, and then just like kind of brings up how like, hey, like, are you happy with the music? And he's like, well, do you like it? And she's like, yeah, I like it, but do you like it? And then another very valid point, and it's like, is he sacrificing his own integrity, basically by doing this? And he's like, well, this is what you wanted, like, and so it is like a back and forth, and like pretty much everyone's bringing up good points is the thing, like, so, some of it goes a little over the line, I don't remember any specifics of that, but that's just how it goes. And then it leads to her, well, the smoke alarm goes off because he left something in the oven, and then so he goes to get it out, and then she leaves while he's getting it out of the oven, and he doesn't look too surprised, but so it's just like that, things didn't go well, and it's just like a rough argument and rough patch and everything like that. So then it cuts to him at rehearsal, and they're like, hey, well, John Legend's like, well, don't forget about the photo shoot today. And he's like, what photo shoot? And he's like, for I forget what it was for, like a magazine or something like that. And he's like, that's today. I thought that was next week. And he's like, yeah, like, is that a problem? Well, it is a problem, even though he doesn't bring it up, because it's the night that her play is premiering, Mia's play. So I don't know. This is like the first like major like, you should not have done that. Granted, it is like, hey, this is my job, and I need the job. So it's like there is a world where he communicates this to her, and maybe she's a little bummed, but hey, I'll be at the next one. That type of thing. She doesn't have to feel that way. That's not what I'm saying. It's but he doesn't say like, hey, like, I didn't know about the photo shoot, that was today, I'm so sorry, I'll get there as soon as I can, that type of thing. None of that. And so it cuts to her, she's going out there, she's like, kind of like readying herself, and she gets out there. We don't really see any of the play, but then we cut back to him during the photo shoot, and the photographer's like super annoying and everything, like just like making him do all these like dumb poses and stuff. And I think right there, he's kind of having this realization, like, do I even want to do this? Is this what I want? Is this what I want to be, like some fucking rock star? Or do I want to like keep my integrity and do the kind of music that I want to do, And also he's like, giving up, he's messing up big time with someone that he loves. So, that there's all these things that are, you kind of just see it all in his face. And we see the show end, her show end, and the lights come up, and there's people in the crowd, but it's like her friends in like one section, and then like a few singular people throughout, like kind of sprinkled, but it's a very light crowd. And so you can kind of see the disappointment on her face, in how many people weren't there or were there, and that he's not there. And we see her backstage, and she's visibly upset, but then she can kind of overhear people, like these two guys, like kind of making like these comments about it and how it was terrible, like, oh yeah, don't quit your J job, and it's like, she's not even a good actor, stuff like that. So obviously that's not going to help either. We see Sebastian pulling up, like speeding and pulling up to the theater. He throws the car in park and gets out, and he's like trying to get in, the door's locked, and he's like tapping on the window, and he's like, and then she comes out, like she's exiting for the night, and obviously upset, and he's like, I'm so sorry, like, how did it go? And it's just like, it's over, like, and he's like, what do you mean it's over? And it's just like, all of it, Like, nobody was there. It was terrible. There's no way I'm going to be able to pay the theater back for all this. I just like, was a stupid dream. I'm just done with it, whatever. She's not outright saying like between them that it's over, but it's heavily implied, and he knows that. And she's like, like, all right, like, just like, I'm done. I'm going home. And she's like, all right, well, I'll see you there. And she's like, no, like, I'm going home. I'm not going there. I'm going home. So I think it's Boulder, Colorado is where she's from. And that's where she's going to, because but I don't know though. It kind of doesn't make sense for a scene that comes up if that's where she is. But that was like the name of her play. It had like Boulder in the title, but I'd have to get on Google Maps to see, because basically there's a point where they do a whole drive from Boulder to LA in one day, and it feels like they probably should have left earlier if if that's what they were doing. But whatever, the suspension of disbelief or whatever. So yeah, we see her driving out there. She gets home to her parents' house and everything, and then we see him at his sister's wedding. Earlier in a montage, there was a part where we saw like the sister getting engaged to someone, because she didn't, she was also single, because he was like kind of giving her a hard time. It was like, well, why are you worried about me? You don't have anyone, So she found love as well. They got married. So he's there playing piano at the wedding. He gets applause and everything. It's beautiful. Then we see him in bed at home, and you could tell he's depressed and everything. Phone rings. He like hesitantly picks up, and they're like, "Hey, is Mia Dolan there?" And he's like, "No, like wrong number." And they're like, "Well, do you know how like to get a hold of her? And are you gonna see her sometime soon?" And he's like, "Probably not." And then it's like, "Well, this is so and so from casting." And then he kind of like perks up, and he's like, "Wait, And they're like, it was someone that was at the one woman show, and she liked what she saw, so she wants to like bring her in for an audition for a movie, and if you could get a hold of her, it's going to be at this time and this place. So for some reason, like, maybe she didn't have her phone on, or was just not answering calls, something like that, or for some reason they just didn't know how to get a hold of her, and then that was like a home phone that she had put at some point. But anyways, they got a hold of him, and then he gets that call, so he's like, you could tell he's like, all right, no matter how I feel or anything like that, like, she's got to know, because that was her dream. So he drives to Boulder, and then it's like her in like the dining room talking to her dad or something, and then it's nighttime, and there's like the honking that we've heard throughout the movie, and she knows what it is, and goes out to the window, and he's just there honking, but he's like not, he like has like the general area, but he's not like sure which house it is, so that's why he's just like honking. And so she comes out, she's like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, what are you doing here?" And it's like, it tells her about the audition, and she's like, "No, like I can't do that. Like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, what if I'm not good enough? Like, what?" Like, it just hurts too much to get rejected, and like I can't put myself through that anymore. And he's just like, "No, like don't say that. Like, this is your dream. You have to do this. Like, it's gonna be okay. You're great. This is for you. You are good enough. Like, all this stuff. Like, just like you have to do it. Like, come on, And then he's like, "All right, like, the audition's at this time. I'll be out here at 8:30 a.m. and you'll either come out or you won't, and then I'll leave you alone after that." And then she's like, how do you even find me? And he's like, "House in front of the library," And it's because that's one of the things she was when she was talking about her childhood, is that she lived across the street from the library in this town, and she would go over there with her aunt to rent old movies and stuff like that. So it's just another one of those like simple things that it just shows that there's a listener, he's listening to those little details and stuff like that. And he just knew that like she's from this town and she lived across the street from the public library. And he just drove there, found the library, and like took it, and then honked until someone came out of one of those houses across the streets. And I think her realizing that like is one of the things that like helped, because it's the morning and he's waiting there and he checks his watch and he's about to drive off, and then she shows up and like tries to get in the car, and she's like, what, like I got coffee, and then I was like, all right, and she gets in the car and then they drive. We see them in the waiting area, and then they call her in, and he's just like, like just there for her, and he's supportive and just like, you got this. And she goes in there and they're like, well, we saw the show, and what we're doing is like the movie's going to film in Paris, and what we're wanting to do is kind of, we don't really have a story, so we want to build the script around the actress. So basically it's like one of those things. It's like, we know we want you, just like, and we just don't know what we want to do yet. So it's like, basically like she's got it, that's the thing. But maybe they did this with a couple actresses, and they're just like, all right, we want one of these girls, and whoever we get, that's when we're going to build the story around. But this like is way more of a sure shot than like anything she's done before, because it's like, hey, we like you, like we saw what you can do, and we got you to come in here, so it's a way bigger deal than anything she's done before. And then for the audition, they're just like, we just want you to tell us a story, so they don't like, there's no like scene that she has to do. It's just like, just tell us a story. And she's like, well, my aunt was from Paris, or lived in Paris for a bit. And then she was tell us these stories about, and then as she's telling the story, it kind of becomes a song. And then on the soundtrack, it's titled Audition, parentheses, The Fools Who Dream. But, so that's the song, and it's just like, it's a super pretty song and everything. It's like she's in the spotlight and everything, and then eventually it like fades, the spotlight fades away and everything goes back to normal, and then she fades away, or like that scene fades away into them. It's her and Sebastian. They're sitting. I don't know if it's the exact same spot from earlier where they did the tap dance, but it is like the Griffith Park area. And they're on a bench and they have a similar view out into the city and everything. And they're talking, and he's just like, I think you're going to get it, And he's just like super confident in her. And she's just like, she's still not convinced and everything. And she's like, like, I don't know. And he's just like, well, when you get it. And she tries to pull if, and then he's like, no, when you get this, you got to give it everything. It's just like, this is your dream and you have to put everything into it. Like, basically like, don't worry about me. Don't worry about anyone else. Just like, you have to do this, And she's like, well, like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'll work on myself. I'll work on my dream, just like, don't worry about that. Like, this is your dream. You got to pursue it. Because this is like, basically like, this is, if you get this, it's a sign that it's meant to be. So like, you got to go for it. And then they kind of talk about like, like where are we? Like, what's our, where are we at like in this relationship and stuff. And I think that's when he's just like, no, you got to do it. Don't worry about that, because who knows, but just worry about this right now. And that's it, and then they do like exchange. She says like, I'll always love you. And he's like, I'll always love you too. And I think that's when the scene cuts. They do make it like a joke about like the view, and they're like, man, like terrible view, sarcastically and everything. So then we get another like seasonal establishing card, and it's winter again. And then we're like, okay, it's like winter next year. Nope, winter 5 years later. So big time jump. We see that it's on the back lot. We see a nice car pulling into a parking spot. We see a high-heeled foot get out and start walking, and then it's pretty apparent that it's her, And she's walking into the same cafe where she worked. It's very it's mirroring a scene from the beginning when she's working at the cafe, and this like big big star, it's a made up star, but the movie star comes in, turning heads, everyone's looking at her, and like they're like, oh, it's on the house, and she's like, no, I insist, and pays and everything like that, and then walks away with her coffees, and it's basically the same thing, but now she's the star, and so it's awesome to see. Then we see Sebastian. He's messing with the piano, like kind of making sure that it's tuned and stuff. And then we can kind of tell from context clues that he now has his own place. So he's got his own jazz club, like he's living his dream right now, and she's living hers. Then we cut back to her, and she's pulling into Chateau Marmont, and she gets into the room or like villa that she's staying at, and kisses her husband, and she's got a kid, like a daughter, probably like 4 or 5 years old. So, it's she's moved on and has like this established family and everything like that. Then we see Sebastian. He's parking his car, going into his club for the night. As he parks the car and starts walking around the corner to the entrance of the club, we see a large poster plastered on the side of the building. It's like a poster for her movie or like a commercial she did, something like that, but it's her face on there, and so he walks past it, he goes into the club. Then we cut back to them. They're heading out for the night. Mia and her husband, they're heading out for the night, like date night, something like that. They get stuck in traffic, and she's like, we don't have to go to this tonight. Let's just like go pull off and get dinner, like I don't want to sit in traffic to go to this. So let's like just go get food somewhere. So they do. And then we see them walking back to their car. And right when they're about to get back in the car, they hear music playing. And, very reminiscent of the earlier scene. And so they hear it, and then they kind of like give a look to each other like, yeah, let's go check it out. And so they go downstairs, and as soon as she hits the bottom of the stairs, you see it on her face like, oh my God. And then we see the logo that she made and the name of the club that she said that it should be, and it's Seb's, and it's like in neon lights, and it's the exact logo. It's got the music note for the apostrophe, and she's like, oh my God, and it's like, you just know it's like shock, but there's no other emotion yet. And so the husband gets a couple drinks, and they get like a small table towards the front, and they sit down, and the music number that was playing finishes up, and then here comes Sebastian out. He grabs the microphone, and he's just like, hey, that was great, thank you guys for playing, and like kind of addressing the crowd. And then as he scans the crowd, he notices her and like hesitates for a long time, and they make eye contact like for a long time, and just like after like a long pause, he's just like, welcome to Seb's. And then so he goes and sits down at the piano and hesitates for a long time, and just like sitting there like waiting to like he's got to decide what he's going to play, and he's also just like reeling with all these different emotions. Then, he starts to play. What's he play? Of course, the Me and Sebastian theme. And so he starts playing it slow on the piano, and then as he's playing it, it fades into him back at the restaurant where he got fired from when he was playing it then. And so then it ends like we're back in that scene where he's playing it, and he hits the crescendo, stands up, makes eye contact with her, talk to J.K. Simmons to get fired or whatever, and then it's, we think we're just seeing the same exact scene. He goes to like walk out, and she, says like, hey, I heard you play, but instead of like shoulder checking her, kisses her, and then the music swells. And then we get this like extended montage / dream ballet. I think that's the term, where it's like this, like, other reality, but it's like, it's a dream, and it's this long extended musical sequence that's taking place in a dream with like no dialogue or anything like that. So I think that's what it's called. Like Singing in the Rain is an example of one. But yeah, so we get this like whole montage, and it's basically like what their life would have been if like different things like had happened. So it's it's them together, but when John Legend comes up at the club, he just kind of waves him away and he leaves, and so he doesn't join that band. And then when she does that audition and nails it, he oh no, like her one woman show, like it's a packed house, and he's actually there, and he's cheering her on and everything. She does that audition, which is cool how they do that one, because that one's in like complete silhouette, like a 2D silhouette, like almost look like they're like paper, like cut out of paper, until like she leaves the room after she got it, and they're like clapping for her, and she goes out to like hug him, and then it like turns into like the spotlight. So they were there, it was just in silhouette, but it looks so cool. And then it's like, but instead of her going alone to Paris, he goes with her, and then he's playing at jazz clubs in Paris, and she's doing her movie, and then they're the ones that get married, and they have a kid together, and then we're seeing their home movies of when she's pregnant, and they're in their house together, and they're fixing up the house, and they're raising the kid. And then it's them going out for the night and leaving the kid with the babysitter, and them arriving at a jazz club, and them sitting in the audience and watching this together. And then it's basically like right when it's catching up to like what happened with right when it's catching up to like that scene where they're at, is when the music goes from like I always forget if it's like I think diegetic is like the music you're hearing, like the music that the characters are hearing in the story. And so it switches from that like non-diegetic to diegetic music, and then it is like the piano in the club, not the like score, if that makes sense. I'm probably not wording it correctly, but so it's like it switches to like him playing piano rather than like the main score. And then once it's caught up to where they actually are, then it cuts back to him, and now it's back to him being at the piano, and he's playing, and he does those last few notes, and then you just kind of see his hand kind of shaking over the keys, and then he hits the last key. Everyone applauds, and he just continues to just sit there. He's not looking over at the audience or anything like that. He's just staring straight forward or down at the keys. And then everyone's clapping, and then the husband leans over like, hey, like, did you want to stay for one more, or you want to get out of here? And she's like, she's kind of like zoned out for a second, then kind of locks back in. It's just like, yeah, no, let's go. Let's get back. We should probably get back. And so they get up to leave, and he's still sitting there. And then he finally like kind of snaps out of his daze and stands up. Or I think he's still sitting there. And then, but once she gets to the door, she turns around like for one last look, and then that's when he finally turns and looks towards her. And then that's when they catch eyes with each other, and then they're just kind of looking at each other, and then they both smirk and like smile at each other, and it is just like a very knowing, like, hey, like we may not be together, but we're both happy, and I'm happy that you're happy, that type of thing. But yeah, so and then he, then she leaves, and he turns back to the piano and starts playing again, and then the end. So yeah, it's a extremely bittersweet ending, obviously, and super emotional. I probably got to cut around like me, like on the verge of tears this whole time. 'Cause definitely, like, I mean, if I'm on Instagram and I just see a screenshot from that scene, it's over for me. It's such a powerful, emotional scene. And I think what's so beautiful about it is that it is showing that like there is more than one happy ending, and man, have I talked about this on here? Like a different episode or something, but, I don't really know. But like I said, there's more than one happy ending for us out there. It's like there is a scenario where, like, in the reality of the story, they both got their happy endings. They both got to pursue their dreams, but they wouldn't. They even though they could have been happy together, if one of them gave up their dream, it required someone giving up their dream, basically. So it's like, yeah, they would have had this beautiful life together, but he wouldn't have got to own his own club. And so he would have been putting his dreams aside, just to make her happy. And yeah, he would be happy, but there might have been that small part of him that was just wishing, like, how do I get to do my own club, or, whatever, it's a piece is missing, in that scenario. And it's not like those are the only two scenarios, there's infinite possibilities in our life. But I think it is just like, hey, no matter what happens, like, you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do to make yourself happy. Obviously, there's situations where we have to make sacrifices, but, it's just like, if you have a dream and you want to pursue it, it's important that you see it through. You either see it through to where you accomplish that dream, or you see it through to a point where it's like, oh yeah, I've hit this roadblock that there's no way I could do this. Like, obviously there's like ways around this, but like, say like, oh, I want to be a marathon, or I want to be a long jumper, and then you get in a car accident and you're paralyzed, and yeah, there's like Paralympics and stuff like that, but I think you know what I mean. It's like that is a thing that is like, I can't do my dream the way, like, I wanted to do my dream. Like I said, there's ways around it. I'm not trying to be like ableist or anything like that. Obviously, there's like the Paralympics, like, they could do amazing things, incredible things that I can't do. I can't even do regular Olympics. So, but like I said, like, there are things that are like, that this is a concrete way that I cannot complete my dream the way, I wanted to, so, but so it's not so much that you hit the goal. It's just you pursue it to the point where you can no longer pursue it. It's where you either have achieved the goal, or you got to a point where it's impossible to reach the goal, and it's obviously like a little emotionally devastating too, because it's like you're so invested in this couple and they don't end up together at the end. But I think it, like, it takes a few watches, I think, to like really appreciate the beauty in it. Like, obviously, like, I thought it was like an amazing movie like the first time, but I was like hella depressed the first time I saw it. I was also mid-divorce the first time I saw it, like in the, like, deep in like the middle of the paperwork, like all that stuff, so it was definitely a interesting time to see a movie like that, but not that there's any similarities to my story and that story, but it's just like the emotions, are similar and stuff like that. And it's just like it's a highly emotional film. And then when you take a highly emotional film and put a highly emotional viewer in front of it, it's going to be, it's going to be a mess, but it's just such a beautiful scene. Like, just, musically, the artistic way that they depict the different things going on in this dream ballet, because it's not like, the only thing that's like straight up reality is that first scene where he kisses her instead of like brushing past her. And then like the footage of like the home movies, even though like the home movies are shot on like 8mm film or something like that, when they would probably be shot on an iPhone, honestly, like in reality. But like, it's like sets that are like a play and stuff like that, so it's just very, like I said, very just dreamy and stuff like that. Like, they're on like these practical hand painted sets that look like Paris, and these like man-made backdrops or like flats and stuff like that, so it's not just like 3D environments. It's very surreal in a way, but yeah, just visually it's stunning. Musically, it's stunning. The acting is stunning. everything's perfect in this. It's just such a beautiful movie and so emotional, so moving. It's just so good. I love it so much. And like I said, I'm not upset that it didn't win Best Picture, because Moonlight was amazing too, and that had its own like emotional, like heavy stuff and everything like that. Even if you can't relate to the specific story, you can relate on an emotional level. But yeah, it's so good. Love this movie so much. Kind of just want to put it back in and watch that end scene one more time, because it's just so perfect. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep repeating myself at this point and just keep talking about how much I love the end scene. I think I've run out of like actual concrete, things to say about it. Now I'm just gonna be gushing about it, and it's just so good. And yeah, it's a hard one to top, honestly, for any movie, but yeah, it's good. It's good. All right, guys. Well, thank you for sticking it out. Thanks for joining me in this new year. Hopefully I can make it through an entire year without having to stop this podcast. I'm on a break right now from school, just winter break, nothing crazy. So I'm kind of trying to utilize this time to get ahead and stuff. And, I got some couple guest appearances in the works and stuff like that. We're just trying to get scheduling down and stuff like that. So stick around. Not sure what I'm doing next week. I'm probably going to stop announcing what my next movie is until we get to like, Christmas month or something like that, where it is just like a schedule, because it could change any day, because I could record something right now, but then the next day I'm going to record something with somebody and I want to put that one out sooner, something like that. So, just stick around. I will post it on Instagram. Fridays is when I announce the following Thursday's episode. So whatever I post on that Friday is what's going to come out. So, that's the only like concrete thing. So if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, tomorrow on Instagram, I'm going to have decided on what movie's coming out. So, stick around for that. Follow the social media, at Movies That Are Pretty Good on Instagram. You can follow the other ones too, but Instagram's the only one I'm actually active on. Like, subscribe, rate, review, all the things. Thank you guys. Hopefully it's going to be a good year, both for, the show and just for society, well, who knows, but we'll see. Well, that wraps it up. Thank you guys for listening or watching, whichever one it is, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Bye.